iMovie's great. I use iMovie all the time.
Yeah, my sister's done iMovie. That's pretty cool.
iMovie is, I came out of the television business. I worked for ABC Television for a decade. And back then, did I tell you about this last time? I remember saying this. Yeah. And so, I mean, now iMovie would be like what $1 million little, TV or video studio would be. And now it's $5 download, and you can start, and you can make all kinds of great videos. It's amazing. And then you can upload them right away to Vimeo or YouTube and have anybody anywhere in the world look at them. It's like the distribution mechanisms too are just remarkable. Just as an aside, a quick thing, interesting, when we talk about search engines, right, we have, what's the number one search engine, do you think? Google.
Yeah.
Google.
Yahoo.
What's number two?
Yahoo.
No.
Bing.
No.
Dang.
Dang, it is dang.
No.
It's YouTube. YouTube.
YouTube. But this is not
YouTube is the biggest ecosystem. People search on
I search
it.
the hell out of YouTube, but I don't.
It's the biggest search engine. That's why now I go there for all my music, right? Whenever I want to listen to a song, I just take it on my phone and I listen to whatever song, and any song you want comes up, right? It's unbelievable. I don't watch the video, I just listen to the music. And it's not the greatest audio quality, but I can hear the tune. It's a remarkable. I mean, you can listen to, John Coltrane from 1956 or anything, it's so obscure and arcane. So YouTube is number two as a search engine. Do you know who owns YouTube?
Yeah, I read about it. Oh my God.
Well, I'll give you a hint. The initials are Google. Google owns YouTube. So, boom, boom, Google has at least 8 products with over 1 billion users. When you think of Facebook is gigantic with about 2 billion users now, but Google has, Chrome, Gmail, YouTube, search. There's a few more that I can't think. Maps. These ones that have over. Maps is like an ingenious thing. When that came out, that's reduced my stress level. I think everybody's. I never get lost anymore. I never worry about where am I going to return the car at the airport in
Right.
Omaha, where I've never been before, because you just follow the dot and the dot goes right there.
It's getting better too, because sometimes you get stuck in or couldn't get you out. It had like a glitch. Do you ever get stuck in a city? You couldn't pop out of it, and then you just had to drive a mile out.
I've never have. I remember my uncle when it first came out. He put in something and it took him, and he went to like Coney Island instead of where he was supposed to go, and so that can be a problem.
Yeah, you gotta kind of
but it's getting a lot better. Right. It's just like with a calculator. You can't just put in the numbers and say, well, this is the thing. It's good to have is it within an order of magnitude of what the answer should be? Should it be a plus? Should it be a fraction or in the hundreds or whatever? It's good to know, exactly, kind of where you're going. But it's amazing how good it is. And Maps is another one. I mean, all these incredibly what?
Have you done Waze?
I haven't, but Waze is good. Like it's like a crowdsourced of where hey, there's an accident here, that kind of stuff.
I was up in Portland with my brother, and you can actually put like what time you want to be at the airport. So we were actually.
I'll tell you how long it's going to take.
It tells you when to leave, and it also pinged him before and it said, "Hey, you might want to leave at 10:10 to get there at noon." So it actually talks to you now and says,
it's amazing.
More traffic's hitting it.
I get that on my Google Maps. They tell me it's going to take 15 minutes to get where you want to go, so you better leave now or something like that. Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's not as accurate. Yeah.
It's not as accurate as Waze, like in terms like if there's like traffic. Like I live in the west side of town, so it's like in the morning now. It's like really crazy. It tells you it's 25 minutes, while I spend maybe 45 minutes.
But I think didn't Google acquire Waze? I think they did. I think they gobbled up Waze. I think they did, but these great apps and things that really help us. And how much do we pay for these things?
Nothing.
Free, right?
With our soul, because they know everything. They listen to us talk.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's it. That's the thing. Is like if the product is free, the products are free, which are incredible. So, we have all these things. We have like Gmail. It's the best email thing going. When I first started using that, and suddenly I had no spam and all that kind of stuff. It got rid of all that. It was amazing.
Have you ever deleted email? I've never deleted email on email.
I don't even delete email.
I have it from like 2003.
I used to have Microsoft, and I have to put everything into little folders and da-da-da. It was like, and then once I got the Gmail, it's like, oh, you mean I can just search my emails? So I don't have to worry about if I want to, what's that person's name or whatever. And so I just leave them in. I don't delete them. I don't care about, I don't open them all. I used to diligently open all my emails. And so that's amazing. I mean, all these projects. But if the product is free, you have to realize that you're not the customer, you're the product, right? So that's what they aggregate up all this information about us, Facebook and Google and all these ones, and then they sell that information, not us specifically, but the statistical information about our groups, or for targeting us for advertisements based on what our psychographic, demographic, and all our other preferences are. I mean, because everything that we click on and like and all this. And it's incredible advertising, especially in Google with search, because they are selling the intention. It's not even just like, hey everybody, we have this product. It's like, you've put in those search terms into the search field, and so that advertiser has bid for those search words, and they come up because you were already intending galoshes or umbrella or suntan lotion, whatever it is. You've already said, I'm intending to do that. So they're way further down the predisposed to purchase kind of route than just anybody who's just like watching TV and sees an ad that may or may not, pertain to them. So really remarkable stuff.
Too, sorry, but with Netflix and smart TVs, they know what they're tracking, what you're watching.
Well, and their prediction engines, what do they call them? Suggestion engines are really, really good.
Yeah.
Amazon and Netflix are the best. And Netflix made theirs in a blitzkrieg, one of those hackathons a few years ago. They got all these, computer guys together, and over a weekend came up with their suggestion engine and they work a little bit differently. The way, Amazon will say, people who bought this book also bought these 3 books, or people who bought, and the same thing with Netflix will say, if you watch these, you might want to watch this too. Yeah. And they all, and Amazon's competing with Netflix there as far as Amazon Prime, right, with their content. And have you ever, they really predispose towards binge watching, right? Because the next episode just starts right up. Sometimes it's hard to get out of, to hit stop. Where's the pause button, to get out of, the episode ended and it's like the next one's going to begin. And it's really remarkable.
I had to laugh this past week because my contacts are not synced
There's
between
that mark.
my phone and Facebook, but they are on the same phone. And so on Facebook, as a suggested new contact, you popped up.
How interesting.
As a result of that email that you sent out to us, I guess. I was like,
well,
okay.
Well, that's the thing that
I give up.
Facebook at first was really trying to be what they call a walled garden, where it was just the Facebook community, because they were so giant that they wouldn't take in external information. But now for advertisers, because advertisers demand it, and the market demands it, they integrate information from other sources, from your credit cards, from your debit cards, from all your purchases, all your Google information, all that kind of stuff. So you're right, they know everything.
Road travel. Now, if Google owns Waze, they'll really know how to get to you. And then you're stopping at the.
Well, they own maps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just heard that the next big project, product that they're thinking that Amazon's going to release are glasses. That they had those sort of augmented reality glasses that Google made, the Google Glass, but next it seems like that's what's they're speculating that Apple's going to. Which will be great. What's going to be they have the watch, they have the the phone, all these kind of things. So
I remember years ago, I don't know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, when I first got on a computer finally, and was going on the internet, and it was like, okay, well, how do you find things? Oh, well, you go to Google, and I was like, oh, isn't that nice? That somebody put this great thing out here that you can find everything. That's really nice of them.
Isn't it? It's very nice, right? But back then,
I was very naive in thinking, because I didn't know diddly about that. I thought, oh wow, great! It's like an index. What a nice company to do that.
Well, exactly, and they were naive. They didn't monetize it at the beginning. This was a PhD thesis by Larry Page, basically. And you know how the search engine basically works, right? Before Google search, it was all sort of manual. There were Yahoo and these other ones that were basically trees of different websites that you go to, and they were actually sorted by people and humans and saying, oh, here's these kind of websites and all. And then what Larry basically came up with, and then Sergey, they're the two partners, the founders, was thinking like he took, and this is where you get really creative, where you take an idea from one domain and apply it to another domain, right? It's not like a new idea, but it's something that's worked in another, and it was from scholarly journals, right? He was working on his PhD, and the way that ever hear, for professors and all, it's publish or perish. You have to keep publishing articles to be, relevant in your field. And so you do research and then you publish it. And you don't want to publish it in some schlocky journal. You want to publish it in some prestigious journal. Well, how do you rate the difference between a schlocky journal and a prestigious journal? It's how many times those journals get cited in other articles. So, and they have this ranking system, like, Science and Lancet and these high-class journals are cited, the articles in there are cited lots of times in other people's work, right? All the footnotes at the back of a scholarly article. So he thought, wow, if that's the way that they rank these for importance and relevancy is by how many times they're cited, we can look at how many links, inbound links to a certain site are coming in, right? And so, like, say if the New York Times said, this is a really great, blog post, or this is a really great website for travel, or this is a really great, things like that, and rank them by how prestigious they are. Or if, Joe Sixpack said, this is a really great, website for travel or whatever, the New York Times one would be a more prestigious link in, right? So they rate what's the prestige of the link in, and then how many links are coming in, and that's how they bubble up in their search, in simplistic terms. And now their algorithms got a lot more sophisticated, but that's how they do it, right? They look at how many links are coming in, what is the prestige of those links, or the goodness of those sources, and then those are the ones that bubble up to the top in the search when you put in your search term. That changed the whole game, right? Suddenly it was all automated, and so you didn't need people to do that. And as the web grew, they could crawl the web and find out where all these sites were, how many inbound links they had, and then these, what they call SEO experts, search engine optimization. It's like, if you want to come up top in the Google searches, just hire us and we'll do it. And they would hack around, game around those systems to try to get you all these inbound links and stuff. So then, little by little, Google had to get more and more sophisticated about how they did their search rankings algorithms and keep that super duper secret so that people don't know how they do it, so they don't figure out how to hack it. So now the best ways to do SEO is to actually have legitimately good content and relevant content, and not use a lot of keywords in your content and populate all these things with metadata to do that, so that you could fool the search engine, because it's much harder now. So that's how Google started. It started with that and made the search engine and just got tons and tons of people signing up. But they didn't know how to monetize it, right, until much, much later, when they came out with Google Ads and said, oh, wow, we can sell advertising based on these keywords, right? So when people, and there's a whole, it's done by auction. It's an auction system. You say, I'm selling, craft beer or something. And so craft beer, and you put that in, and that term probably, and then everybody bids on that term. So that term gets bid up to whatever. If somebody puts that in, I want my ad to come out, I'll pay $15 to have every time that comes up, so that my ad's on top, or whatever it is, and somebody else says $13 or $20, and then whoever has the highest bid, plus they have to be relevant, they can't just be baloney, they get to come up at the top. And then every time, and only when somebody clicks on the ad, do you pay that price. So every single keyword is auctioned, every single word, every single phrase is auctioned off in this way. And so you could go into more, summer wheat lemon beer, or something like that, and get more refined, and then you probably in more niche, and then you wouldn't pay as much for the kind of keywords. So you make these longer phrases and things like that. And so that's how they monetize. That's how they make their money. And it's a beautiful thing for the advertisers, right? They're buying intention. You've already typed in that phrase, beer, and it's like, beer, you want beer? We got the best beer, right? Oh, great, and click on it. And it's great for the advertisers that way. It's a good service for the people, because you put it in and look what pops up, exactly what you wanted, right? And so, and then it's also great for the advertisers, because unless somebody actually clicks on your ad, you don't get charged. You can't do that with a TV commercial or a magazine ad, right? It's not, well, they have to at least go to my website or go to my paywall, and so that it's only click-throughs that have to pay. Amazing things, you know. And so it's much more targeted and much more effective, and it's disrupted the whole advertising world, you know, marketing world.
I'm kind of curious because I almost have like a, you know, I go in the opposite direction, you know, if I type something in and then it comes up, and of course, you know, the ones that are paid advertising have got that little, I don't know, it's got a little icon next to it somehow, you know, so that, you know.
In the search results, it has the little ad thing, and then also on the side, they come up too. Right.
Yeah.
And I always go down below them.
Typically, you know, when it comes up, I ignore those and just go to the ones that don't.
I totally do. I go to the organics,
You know,
yeah.
I want to go to the ones that are just coming up via rankings as being most relevant.
Right, the organic
And
search,
so
that's
now
what I
what
do
I'm
too.
Curious is if, you know, at some point whether they're going to do away with that little icon so you won't be able to tell the difference anymore. Just,
They might, but I don't think so. You never know. Their business, I mean, it is an absolute money-making machine that works really, really well. So I don't think they would tweak with it in that way. And yeah, I mean, even the one, sometimes the organic result is the same as the paid result, but I'll click on the organic result. In a way, I do it because I just don't want to do the ad one, but I'm also saving that company money, right? Because if you clicked on that one, then they had to pay for the ad. And it's like, oh, if you do on the organic one, you have to pay. So you're right, and you come up, and so I avoid them too. But lots of people just go for those, and there's ads on the side, and then they track you that way. Another way, if you go on a website, there's all these things called cookies or little tracking data that they put in on every website. That's why you go and even in your email, you might say, you know what, I'm going on vacation and I need to buy a new bathing suit. You know, I'm going to go to, you know, Macy's and look. And then all of a sudden the next day you come back and you're on Facebook or some other thing, and what comes up? But all these ads for that kind of thing. It's like, they know what, how did they know what I'm doing? You know, it's really, really wild. I mean, it's amazing. And
it's a little freaky, but it's like, you know.
Well, it's more than a little freaky. And we've completely, you know, it used to be these all cautionary tales of dystopia, right? You know, Big Brother's going to watch 1984, all these kind of stories about we're going to have this surveillance state and they're going to know everything that we're doing and they're going to, you know, be able to control our minds and all that kind of stuff. And we abdicated all that kind of stuff so fast, you know, it's unbelievable, right? All we do is bury ourselves in our phones and, you know, look at everybody, right? All the time. And so we're happy to have these free services and give up our privacy and give up all our information in exchange for these free, convenient, delightful services. These things, you know, give us lots of delight. Put us in contact with people. I mean, anybody have, you know, long lost friends from high school or junior high or grade school that you found on Facebook or something like that? How would you ever have gotten in touch with that person otherwise? Or know what, you know, your uncle so-and-so's doing, you know, halfway around the world or something like that, and you just see that, oh, today they went to the beach or whatever. You know, it's just incredible how you can keep up with everything. So it really is useful, but it also has this sort of monetizing side, and it also has a sort of sinister and dark side that we've just started to even be revealed to us with nudging us in certain ways in elections and all this disinformation campaigns and all kinds of stuff that we realize, oh my gosh, you know, I mean, back in the Cold War days, you know, the Russians were really the bad guys, and all of a sudden we realize that they manipulated our election, and we're still like, oh yeah, I wonder what's on Facebook. You know, it's really amazing, and that stuff has happened and is continuing to happen, and that whole Brexit vote, they realized that was really, you know, nudged with and it's not like they just give complete propaganda. They take and copy stories that are done, and little by little, maybe, you know, a couple little stories or a little bit of nudge, and it's just enough to make things happen. So it's gotten really sophisticated. So where does marketing end? Where does propaganda begin? Where does our privacy end and begin? Well, today, right? Was it today I think today? There were Senate hearings that won the confirmation for the Supreme Court judge Kavanaugh, but another group of hearings that kind of got obscured, Senate hearings that we're on today, was with Facebook. It was supposed to be Facebook, Twitter, and Google. were supposed to be there, right? And Facebook brought Sheryl Sandberg, their COO, right? And Twitter brought the head guy who went away, Jack Gary, who went away and then came back. He's also the CEO of Square. He went away from Twitter and made Square, you know, that payment system that's just fantastic. And now he's back as CEO of Twitter again. Dick Costello was it for a while.
Did he found Twitter?
He was one of the founders of Twitter. Ev Williams, Jack Dorsey, and a couple other guys. And Ev Williams now did Medium, which is a great blogging platform that's sort of like Twitter, but longer form blogs. So they had those three guys, you know, the three were supposed to come, and Sergey and Larry didn't want to go, you know, or Eric Schmidt, has really been the guy that was the adult supervision for Sergey and Larry and really brought them into a monetized money-making machine. They were going to send their chief legal guy, you know, their corporate counsel, and the senators said that's not good enough, you know, you guys have to come, and they just said no. So they had an empty chair there. Supposedly I didn't see an empty chair for the Google guys that didn't show up, and they just decided not to show. Now I don't know if that was a sign of disdain or whatever, or scaredness, or what I really think it is, because they're so super smart and that company's unbelievable, is that they're probably working on some really sophisticated algorithmic artificial intelligence machine learning tools to scope out what's real and what's not and stuff, and get their platform just like they did with, you know, spam filters and everything else. And they're going to knock that out, and they probably didn't want to come and talk about their efforts because that might undermine. If people hear about them, then they can go around them. So they'll probably come out and say, we don't have that problem anymore because, you know, we've got, you know, our giant machine learning tools, you know, knowing exactly where these sites are coming from, and knowing a, you know, innocent kid in Nebraska from sinister guys in North Korea or whatever, you know. So we'll see, but interesting, and they're trying to figure this out because here we're coming up in 60 days on another election, and all these nefarious forces are out there trying to manipulate us. At the end of the day, though, you can't legislate this, and you can't expect the companies to define what's right. It's on us, right? We really have to have our critical thinking hats on so that we look and say, wait a minute, what's the source of this article? Does this even make sense? Instead of like, you know, Hillary Clinton has a child sex ring out of a pizzeria or whatever kind of crazy stuff that they were talking about, you know, and say, does this really sound like it makes sense or not, you know? It's the onus is on us, ultimately, I think. So, enough said there. I want to get to your point now about Google, and not Google, but Apple just became the first company just last week or something, or 2 weeks ago, that had $1 trillion valuation. Amazon just nudged in there now, and they've just changed it. Amazon's just about $2,000 a share. Sorry, you know.
Killed me.
And
oh my God.
any of you heavily into Bitcoin? Good. I had some students last kind of were like, you know, into it and buying it. And now it's like, you know, tanking. But they just reevaluated, you know, a lot of the analysts that cover stocks and say it's probably going to go to $24.50 or something like that a share. And think about that. Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world now at these prices, and he's just getting richer. And they're into all kinds of businesses. And I'll show you that video. But you wanted to know about, so we'll talk about valuations of companies. Just what the heck does that mean? And it's getting into some of the other courses, but I think these things are all interrelated, right? One thing is, first of all, Amazon has a number of giant competitive advantages over Walmart or any type of bricks and mortar store. One is they don't have inventory and working capital that they have to have in these stores, right? They just have it back in warehouses. In a lot of cases, it's just a button and you drop ship it from the manufacturer to you, and there's nobody in between. In fact, Amazon just said today they're going to start using Mercedes vans for deliveries and stuff. And Amazon actually has the U.S. Postal Service working for them on Sundays.
They should buy
all they do.
They need to buy the Postal Service.
Supposedly, but you know, not in Albuquerque.
Oh yeah, no, they do.
No, they do.
My guy came on Sunday, and I asked him, "What are you doing working on Sunday?"
I am in Albuquerque because I've had about 3 different times when something was supposed to have been delivered on Sunday, and no delivery attempt was made,
Wow.
and it showed up as attempted delivery, unable to access the front door.
That's because your guy was at the bar, especially now that it's
Yeah, no.
NFL season.
No,
You're not going to get Sunday
I'm
delivery.
like, no, there was no attempt made. I was here all day long, and this happened about 3 times.
Well,
Every time I've gotten up.
my old post guy, one day I said, "What are you working on Sundays?" "Oh, we have Amazon. We work for Amazon now, on Sundays."
Yeah,
Amazing.
I've got it on Sunday.
But so they have all of that, right? They can reduce their prices because they don't have to carry inventory like that, right? So if you don't have that cost, you don't have to cover that cost, and so you can reduce your prices. So they have better prices in that way. The other super duper advantage that they have is that they have information on us that the other stores don't have when we come to buy. They look and see what's your buying history, what browser you're coming in, and they have this whole and statistically, they can see who buys these kind of products at what time of the day and all that kind of stuff. And so they can skim. They can charge you more for a product and charge you less depending on whether they think you'll pay more or you'll pay less. And that's not discrimination. They're not doing it on religion or race or anything like that. But they can, just like matinee tickets, right? Or senior citizen tickets or whatever, you can, or if you book an airplane flight well in advance, and then if you try to book it at the time, it's much more expensive.
Is it almost better to get another account? Just like after 5 years, just open another account?
I don't. No. They have all this information anyway. I mean,
With the IP address or something?
yeah, and not even they have everything that you've ever done on Google and your debit card, what you bought at Smith's last week.
That's kind of crap. If they're going to
everything.
charge you more, and they know they can get it, you'll buy it.
Well, what happens?
Terrible about
Oh, I know.
You got to go to a different computer to search for it the next day because they do have your IP address and they'll raise the price.
Well, right, exactly. Especially if you're looking at it again. Yeah, we're going to gig you a little bit. So do you know what this is?
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. So this is economics, and so we're going to start. This is microeconomics, right? The small economics. Macro is the big stuff. So supply and demand, right? And you know what you switch? And what the axes are?
Demand is going down and so
Price is up.
Demand is going down.
supply is up.
Supply is going up. And what are the axes?
Price and quality.
Oh, you guys are good. I'm amazed.
Read a little bit of your book.
That
On the other
is
hand, I'm glad you're bringing this up.
really,
Because
really
I looked
good.
at that and I thought, I remember discussing this in Economics 101 a zillion years ago.
Well-
and I really not even sure I get it right now.
Oh, let's go through it so you get it, because it's real simple. The law of demand is a downward sloping curve because let's think of it as pizza, right? And this is price, right? So if pizza cost $50 a pizza, maybe some people would buy it, right? Maybe one or something like that. I don't know. Maybe if it was a Super Bowl and you really wanted to have a pizza, whatever, you're jonesing for a pizza, right? So say that pizza was $1. Little Caesars ran an ad. Well, heck, lots of people would buy it, right? It makes sense? Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that as price goes up, demand's going to go down, right? And the slope of this line, slope is how much the one changes relative to the other. It's basically, this over this. Mm-hmm. There's different slopes, right? A really steep slope would be that no matter what you did to price, demand didn't change that much, say in the short term. Can you think of any kind of things that have that kind of a
iPhones maybe.
gas, right? If they said gas is $10 a gallon and you had an empty tank, you'd complain, but you'd fill it up, right? Or get as much as you could. Cigarettes, right? People are always like, man, when they go to $3 a pack, I'm going to quit. And now it's like $7 a pack and they're still smoking. Right? Those kind of things have a steep demand curve. It doesn't change as much as the quantity doesn't change as much. So then raise the price, right? Because revenues, you're going to increase. Revenues are what? Price times quantity, right? How many you sell by how much you sell them by. So what you're really trying to do is maximize revenues. That's what companies are trying to do, right? So that's when you get into this thing called the elasticity of demand, where elasticity of demand is revenues will go up for a while until you raise the price a little bit too high, and then people will bail and do something different, right? And there's markets where there's lots of substitutes, or people will just substitute across. There's ones where you're the only thing, and so like iPhones or something, you're going to buy it. And people test those things. The iPhone 10, right, the X, sort of testing the price of the market. Because a lot of times companies in their marketing things charge too little. And a lot of the VCs and stuff just say, you got to charge more, you can get more, charge more. Think of Disneyland, right? Disneyland, there's a certain amount of tickets they can have for the gate every day. And they could do those tickets at $35, or if they put the tickets up to $100, might be a little bit different people, but they'll still sell it out. And they can see, and get up to the place where there's, like, think about baseball stadiums, right? Used to be you go to a baseball game for like $5 or something like that. Now try to go to, Fenway Park or Yankee Stadium, it's going to cost you $100, $200 to go. And then if you want to have a beer and everything else, it's going to be $500. How do people, concerts, right? The Rolling Stones come through town. You used to be able to get a ticket for $12 or something. Now it's, $150 or something like that. It's incredible. So that's the slope of this. And there's other ones that have very slight slopes too, right? If you raise the price a little bit, people are going to jump ship and jump to the other brand, whatever the substitute is, or just not buy the thing and forgo it or whatever. So when you have a big market, and then supply is the same way, right? If supply is low, think of oil. If supplies, if gas prices are low, they're not drilling a lot because it doesn't make sense. You can't, drill and then make enough money to cover the drilling costs. But if suddenly gas prices go up, lots of oil starts getting drilled, right? Because there's the supply will go up because there's lots. They can get more money for it.
I don't
right?
understand that one though. Okay, so
if the price is low for something,
so the price goes up. That seems to be saying that then supply is going up along with it.
yeah, exactly. So say like this. Say pizzerias again. Pizzerias again. If the pizza costs $1, a lot of pizzerias are going to say, I can't compete. To buy the dough and buy the tomato sauce and have somebody to cook it in the heat of the oven, it costs me $1.25. I just can't do it. I don't know how they're doing it. I'm going to close my shop. And so people go away. But if it's $50, everybody and their brother's going to be buying a pizza oven and getting into business because pizza costs them $2 to make and they're making $48 a pie, or whatever, right?
But so that S but the S line is supply, you're saying.
Supply, right. So as price goes up, more people are going to come into the market, and the quantity of the supply is going to go up.
Okay. Because I guess I was thinking about it backwards, because I was thinking about, for example, oil.
Yeah.
As they reduce the supply by cutting back on production, then that jacks price up. And as they increase production, thereby increasing supply, then price comes down.
Well, that's if you move these lines, right? If you move the line up here and say we're going to make less, then price is going to go up to. We're just saying on one line here, but if you actually move the line, say we're going to decrease supply, move that to the left here, then price is going to go up to equilibrate it. Yeah. So that you can these lines can move besides being static. But if they're static, at some point the market's going to clear, right? There's going to be a price where the market clears. There's probably more demand for Ferraris than people can do because the price is super high, right? But the market clears like that, right? So and so let's call this Q1 and P1 or something like that. And so that's the way economics works, supply and demand. And these things work in auctions or whatever. eBay, something like that, is another auction thing, right? How much you want for my old pair of Nikes? We'll talk about Nike in a minute, but right? And then somebody bids, and then it clears where that person is gonna bid. So these things move. But where in a store like Walmart or something, they set the price, and everybody pays the same price, right? If you go and look at a box of Tide, it's $2.89 for the box of Tide. And if you come back tomorrow, probably still at $2.89. And whether or not you're desperate for that Tide because you've got the clothes sitting in the laundry and you got to get it, they can't tell that, and so they're going to charge you the same as the other. So whatever happens here, that person who's going to buy that $50 pizza is so grateful that the pizza is only $5, and they're going to buy it. And this in here, this place in here is called the consumer surplus. This is the benefits to consumers, basically, that where this goes. The people that would pay more for it don't have to. It's pretty nice, right? Because there's probably people who say, man, this thing is so unbelievable. This iPhone has all those maps and everything else. I pay $2,000 for it, but well, I can get it for $800 or whatever, right? That's the consumer surplus. Well, a lot of companies, what they like to do is skim this. They want to get this, right? They don't want to give that up. That's money on the table. And that's what Amazon can do that Walmart cannot do, right? Walmart can't go and say, Joe, somebody's coming down the aisle, they look pretty desperate for that Tide, bump up the price, $1, right? But Amazon can do that. And if you come back and look at things a couple times, they can either bring the price down or up depending on the time. And they know that statistically on Friday afternoons people buy this, or on Sundays they buy this, or people that come on a Chrome browser are more upscale and they'll buy this. All those kind of things get fed in to their algorithm, and they change the price, and they'll charge somebody $302, and they'll charge somebody else $289. And they make the sale, but they try to see where they can capture this kind of stuff, and they have all that information to do that.
I've been buying from Amazon for more than 2 years, and I've never thought that they were doing that.
Yeah, I've seen it on one product. I can think.
Well, Jerry Kaplan has like a 3-minute thing, and he goes in, and he's really eloquent on it. And but that's the basis, right? So
Amazon tried to do some grocery stores, or they did it, where you just go in, you just get your groceries and walk out. They're probably like, oh, hey, this guy is.
Well, you have to go in with a smartphone that
Right.
that has the pay thing on it.
Maybe
You
they're
just can't go.
Maybe they're jacking your bananas up a little bit.
Well, maybe that's quite a metaphor. Now they own Whole Foods, ladies and gentlemen. And they're starting to do all kinds of home delivery, and now Walmart's saying they're going to deliver at home, and so there's this big competition. And at the end of the day, we're kind of the benefactors of that, right? If they make it more convenient, and these other companies have to fight to try to for their survival and make it more convenient, we get some good things. And Amazon's also trying things where they have access to the trunk of your car, so they can put packages in the trunk of your car, so it's not waiting outside your door and stuff like that. They also are going to put cameras in your house so that they can actually bring people in the house and you can feel comfortable that they're doing that. I bet soon they'll do stuff like, wouldn't it be great if your refrigerator had a back door to the refrigerator outside, and the guys could come in and boop, 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 put all the stuff in. You'd come home, yep, the milk's there and everything, and they knew when you were out of whatever by an app or whatever, and they could restock your stuff whenever needed. So that kind of stuff. And they want to have drones to deliver things, and now they're doing the Mercedes vans. And so they've got all of these competitive advantages over bricks and mortar stores. That's only one business that they're in. They're also in the movie business, and they have that great streaming service. They have AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, which is basically making the whole entire infrastructure for all of the internet and for all the governments and everything. And they took over that market stealthily before Microsoft and Google even know what's going on. They have all these server farms. Nowadays, to start a company, and if you're a software company, you don't have to do anything like rack your own servers, go buy a bunch of computers and keep them in a room that's cold and all. You just go to Amazon Web Services, and there's Azure is the Microsoft competitor now, and Google has one too. And then as much computing capacity as you need, you just rent from them, and as you scale up, they just give you more, and you don't even have to worry about that. And you can start for free. So the price of starting up a computer company now is like zero. All those prices have been dropped. Computing power is basically dropped to zero. Where even 5 years ago, you had, I want to make that. I want to make a web thing or something. Well, I'm going to have to buy 5 servers, and oh boy, it's really catching on. We got to get 10 more servers, and we need more air conditioning, more power. Don't have to worry about that anymore. So really remarkable stuff. They have all these different lines of business. And then they started out with books, and now they've moved into the everything store, right? Which was always the idea. So they've been growing and growing and growing. They have all of this market dominance now and all. And when they said that they've become $1 trillion company, what the heck does that mean, right? So with a company, we'll go over here and talk about balance sheets for a second, right? That's sort of the worth of a company. So what's on a balance sheet?
Assets, liabilities.
And where do they go?
What's that?
Where do they go?
Assets on left, liabilities on right.
Oh, and what else?
They gotta equal each other.
Right. And the thing that makes them equal each other is equity, right? So the accounting equation is, so now we're going to get into a little accounting, right? Assets equal liabilities plus equity. That's the accounting equation, right? It's a balance sheet. This side has to equal this side. And these two things fund these guys, right? So think of it this way. Think of it, anybody own their house? Or think about owning a house, understand the thing? Well, when you own a house, basically think about a balance sheet as a house, right? and then every other company is exactly like that. What's the asset?
Land.
Right, and what's the price of that asset? This is the hard part.
What'd you buy it for?
It's
It could be what you bought it for in accounting, but basically
payment.
it's the appraised value. So you have an appraiser come out. When you sell your house, you have an appraiser come out, whatever kind of thing, right? And they say, comparables and what the market is and what the last sales were, and they adjust because somebody else had 3 bedrooms, you have 2, whatever it is, right? And they come up with the value. So let's say, just to make the math easy, they come out, 100 grand is the house worth. What's the liability?
What you owe.
And what's that called?
Debt.
Well, it's the mortgage, right?
Oh,
Call it a
yeah,
mortgage,
that's
right? But it's the loan, but we call it a mortgage. Mortgage just means that they keep the title of the asset and all that kind of stuff. But it's a loan, and there's lots of different loans and businesses and liabilities. It's what you owe, though. It's what you owe. You have obligations on that, right? So just to think of it in a simple way, it's the mortgage on your house. So say you bought the house for 80 grand, and you have 50 grand still on the mortgage because you paid off a little bit, right? So you still have 50 grand. So if these things are going to own, what's this number then? 50, right? 50 plus 50 is going to equal this, right? So this is going to be 50. And if this was 80, this would be 20. If this was 20, this would be 80, right? And what do we call this? Homeowners' equity, right? So we even use the word equity, right? So these are the numbers. Same thing for any business. You never get confused about a balance sheet again, right? With assets in a company, you got a whole bunch of different lines. It goes from most liquid to least liquid. So you start with cash, and then you have your accounts receivable. That means the money people owe you, but they haven't paid you yet for your stuff. Then you have your inventory. That's a little bit less liquid. Then you have your fixtures and equipment and all that stuff, your machines and your building and your trucks and all that stuff. That's a little bit less liquid. You couldn't use that tomorrow to go pay off your debts. You have to go sell it and all that kind of stuff, right? And then you go down into your intangible assets, like your intellectual property and goodwill and stuff like that, your brand kind of stuff. So it's just more things, but they're just all valued and they're just assets. And then your liabilities are your paywall, your bills. Those are current ones you got to pay each month. And then you have some long-term ones, like maybe you have a bank loan or whatever kind of things, some loans and stuff like that. And then equity is what's left over, right? So what do the stock, and then if it's so this is what the owners own, right? Just like you own your house. They own the equity. And in a company, you could just own it all, right? But in a big company, they sell shares of it, right? So a company might have 1 million shares of stock, right? And then say if it was 1 million shares of stock, and the company, the equity was $1 million, right? Then each share of stock would be worth how much? $1, right? Yeah. And how do we do that? We divided the amount of equity by the amount of shares outstanding. Simple enough. So, same thing with companies. A company like Amazon has, and it'll say on their balance sheet, how many shares outstanding, 300 million or 2 billion or 500, whatever it is. It's kind of an arbitrary number, right? And then as the assets grow and the liabilities go down or whatever, as the assets grow, then the equity grows. And then what happens if the shares are static, right? You could issue more shares to raise more money, like to Wall Street or something. But then more money, say if suddenly instead of 100, this went up to 200, right? Because, we're selling lots of stuff and whatever. And then this number would go up to, whatever. Then this would be 150, right? And so this number would go up, right? That number would go up. So that's what you do when you buy stock. You're hoping that the company's going to go up, and your little piece of that pie, right? You got all these little pieces of this pie, are going to go up too, raise in price. So what's happened with Amazon is that the amount of this equity is now worth $1 trillion. And so the stock, you can figure out how many shares they have outstanding because it's about $2,000 a share. It just went to about $2,000. So if they have $1 trillion worth of market value and $2,000 a share, well, we can figure out how many shares. It's just easy math, right? Just have to figure out how many zeros in a trillion. but it's a lot of shares. But you could actually, and it'll show on the balance sheet this. And you can look online, the SEC, there's documents called 10Ks, which are the reporting, every year that a company has to do that show their financial statements and show this. And we could do the math and then look on there and we'd be pretty darn close, to that number. But that's what that means. And these companies are the first companies to reach that number. No, we haven't had, General Motors, General Electric, none of these companies have ever been worth $1 trillion. $1 trillion. It's remarkable. And so that Jeff Bezos, if it's $1 trillion, and I think he's worth about 200 billion now or something, pretty close to 200 billion. It was like 175, 180, something like that. It's getting close. Just to keep the math easy, if it's $1 trillion and he owns, and his net worth from his Amazon is 200 billion, how much of the company does he own? 1/5, right? So he's kept a nice piece of the pie for himself, and he's made a lot of other people very, very wealthy too. That have worked for him. There's a lot of millionaires and a lot of billionaires even, or hundreds of millions of dollars that work for Amazon. Nice to be like employee number 22 or something like that.
How about the painter for Facebook? Did you hear about that guy?
You were a painter for Facebook?
No, the painter for Facebook. Have you seen that? Heard that story?
He made a mural or something, and they paid him in shares.
They paid him shares. He's cashed out for $200 million.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're worth $200 million.
Yeah, have you heard that?
They said 40,000. They give him 40 grand, or they give him some shares.
And he took the shares, and the company went bananas. But there's lots of companies that didn't. There's for every guy like that. But those are amazing stories. And there's Silicon Valley is filled with these stories of people that have made giant fortunes. And it used to take, like these companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, they're floated on the stock market, right? So we can actually buy them, which is incredible. I mean, we can actually participate in this kind of stuff. And if you weren't so stupid to sell those, you'd be. No, we can't, which is really amazing. 140?
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
But there's that kind of stuff that that we can actually buy into these companies is really an incredible opportunity, and participate in this kind of growth and all. But you have to bet on that. Back in 1999 or 2000, it was kind of tough to see, was Facebook going to make it? They were battling then with some of the publishers and all that stuff. Is it going to be, And looking back, it's like, oh, why didn't I do that? But at the time, you just don't know.
I'm kind of curious. What are your thoughts about where Facebook is going now? I mean, do you think they're going to survive and continue to grow?
Why would I know? But
I'm just curious.
It's such a volatile market, and those guys stepped in it so many times. I mean, they were really lucky with how they were able to monetize what they had. They really didn't know what they had, and they were able to make money. And then they made a couple of incredibly good. There's two ways to make money as a company. One, the big way is when you invent something really great, right? And then you figure out how to get people to pay for it. And they figured that out with their Facebook advertising, but it took them a long time, and they goofed it up a bunch of times, and they're really lucky. And then they bought WhatsApp and Instagram, which were just giant, great buys for them. So they've been lucky in their acquisitions, which is sort of like a secondary way that they make money. But for them to repeat that kind of brilliance, I don't know. Now they're tapping out too. They have 2 billion users, right? 2 billion users. That's, we're thinking like, U.S. Congress is calling in Mark Zuckerberg and going to tell him what to do and yada, yada, yada. It's like, you got to be kidding me. The U.S. is like maybe 5% or less of their business. They're all over the world. They're a transnational company. They don't need the U.S. They don't need the U.S. government to be dictating terms to them. They'll just go somewhere else. And most of their business is outside the United States. So, and they're incredibly relevant in other parts of the world. We're running into issues now, and it'll be interesting to see and these issues are dinging the brand, right? Everybody's like, Facebook bad, Russians on there, whatever. People think this stuff, or they're telling, fake news and all this kind of stuff. And to a degree that's true, but also you can, I mean, for me, I just find it incredible that I can talk to old friends and see what old friends are doing and get in touch with them and family and all. It's really a remarkable tool, and a lot of places in the world don't have, I mean, they've leapfrogged all the other infrastructure they didn't have to have these incredible tools. So it's even more relevant in other places, I think, but I don't really know. But so on balance, and anything, when you have 2 billion users, any number times 2 billion is a big number. So their revenue numbers are big, they're just giant. So, but whether or not they're going to be leapfrogged by somebody else, or somebody else can come in and figure out a new thing. I mean, there was MySpace and there's all these other things you can talk about that went by the wayside. Facebook may be, the graveyard of those kind of businesses in 5 years, or they may be uber dominant. What they're doing now is trying to figure out, they're starting to tap out. There's not that many more, users in internet service. If there's 10 million people and 2 billion of them, 10 billion and 2 billion of them, or 8 billion and 2 billion of them are your customers, and the rest don't have cell phones or internet service and all. So now what they're doing, and Google's doing the same, is figuring out ways to deliver internet service for free, right? So they're doing it with big balloons that'll be up in the air for long periods of time and have a big footprint that'll be over Africa or India or other places, and they're also doing it with solar-powered, airplanes that can stay up for 10 years at a time and just deliver, the free internet. Now think about that. When that happens, I'd be careful not to be into, going long in my stock portfolio on Verizon and those kind, and Cricket and all those kind of companies, because those cell companies, if they're giving us free internet like that, and we can get on FaceTime or we can get on Skype or one of those other services, and we don't have to pay a telephone bill, I'll be the first to get rid of my telephone bill, I got to tell you. So those companies are incredibly vulnerable if this free internet, free Wi-Fi kind of thing, or whatever else the next generation of Wi-Fi is, we won't need these cell towers anymore. Because cell is an old technology, and cell basically is all these little radio towers, right? And they have a certain radius of coverage, and we've put up an amazing amount of them. And our phones are so smart that as we drive through or whatever, it picks up, if this is the signal, it's strong here, and then when you move into this, and then it switches from this tower to this tower. And as you drive, you have a seamless, or wherever you are, you have this seamless kind of thing. That's what we've done we've tiled the whole country to a degree with this cellular service. Pretty sophisticated and neat, but if we just had one giant internet that was free that covered that whole area, well, that would be probably a better way for us. So all the ways that that stuff comes into our house, the cable companies dodged a bullet when everybody's cutting the cord for their cable TV, right, and streaming and all, and using Wi-Fi. But we still need to get the Wi-Fi into our house, so we still either need the copper from the telephone company or the coaxial cable from the cable network. So they've had a lucky kind of second life. They should have been all disrupted out of business like the Blockbusters and the Hollywood videos, but they haven't yet. But pretty soon they're probably going to be. So all of these infrastructure companies like that, I think those are stocks to short. Short means you're betting they're going to go down. Instead of, when you go long, means you think it's going to increase in value.
Comcast?
No.
No, what you just said makes total sense.
Right.
Actually, I kind of wondered why they were doing free stuff. I never snapped. I never thought put that together. It's pretty interesting.
That what?
Why Google was wanting to do like wireless cities and all this other stuff. I never thought that.
Well, because right now, and then they get all the data, right? They want to get as close to us as they can. So if we have free service, and in a second we're going to give up all that other information about ourselves, and free Wi-Fi. Well,
they
tell us
like
everything.
They want the people connected. It's all good and this and that. And
well, that's the thing. There's this sort of dichotomy of Silicon Valley and their highfalutin intentions, or what they say about connectivity and global community and all the collaboration, all that stuff, and we want your money, and we want to know everything about you so that we can juice as much money out of you, extract as much money out of you as we can. And so right now, if we're using all their services, that's a great way for them to get all our information. But if they're actually getting us right at the place where we're actually getting online, oh, great. And think about that though. If it's free, that's wonderful for us. When AOL came on and all these services, remember that? It cost, what was it, $29 a month or something? Remember the little discs you get? Those costs fell by the wayside. All these, think about if you can get rid of your telephone bill, your cell bill and your cell phone bill, and you can get rid of your cable bill. That's probably $300 a month or $200 a month, whatever. That's freeing up cash for us, to go and spend with Google and Facebook and Amazon. But so it's interesting. So that's how this is done. Basically, there's a fixed amount of shares as the equity, and if the company has a loss in that year, they have to take that money out of equity so that the stock price goes down. Those kind of things. And it's actually, this is the book value of the company. So it's really not that the stock price is based on what people think the future value of the companies are. So let me get just a little bit more into this so when you think about a stock price, right? Stock price is a price today. And really what that price is based on is everybody's guess in the market of what the future cash flow, the present value of the future cash flow stream is going to be. So basically every company has another thing beside a balance sheet called an income statement, right? Income statement is your revenue minus your expenses equal your net income. You know all about this too, right? This is no secret. This is how much money you get each month, your rent, your food, your whatever car payment, and hopefully you have a little bit left over. Or if it's zero, you're doing pretty good. If it's negative, you're in trouble, right? So we're running a business every day, right? We're running a business every day called our lives. And so on this, so you have this, right? So this net income is going to be some number for this year, and for next year, and for the next year, and for the next year, and for next year, right? And so each one of these years, and maybe revenues are going to go up, expenses might go down, this number might increase a little bit, or it might be a company where these are pretty steady, but they're pretty stable, but they're steady, or it might be a company you think is going to tank, and these are going to get littler and littler, like that, right? And then you think about the uncertainty relative to this, right? And you have to put the relationship between the present value of money and the future value of money. What's that relationship?
Inflation?
Well, it's even a more general term. Interest rate, discount rate, right? So if you had $1 today and you put it in the bank and you could make 5% or whatever in a bond or something, right? Say if you had $1 today and you can make 10% on it. How much would it be worth next year? How much would it be worth in 2 years? And why 121? Right, it's this twice, right? And then in this year, I think it's like 134, whatever. And so it's compounding interest, and that's the thing. So if you're going to get $1 in year 4, what's its value today? Well, it's going to be less than $1, right? Because if you had $1 today, it would be worth $1.34 then, right? So maybe it's worth 89 cents. Does that make sense to you, kind of? Yeah. And it's a function of the interest rate. We did 10%, but what if we said, it's more of a risky thing, 15% or what, I'm going to demand as an investor, or, it's a really great deal, I'll take it for 5%. Whatever it is, those kind of things impact these numbers, right? So believe it or not, really what the stock price is the everybody's guess. It's an auction, right? It's an auction. People are buying and selling shares of Amazon, and they're thinking, I bet it's gonna, this stream is gonna go out into the future, and the present value of all these numbers added up for Amazon for a share of stock is $2,000. That's basically how that number is determined. And it's an amazingly accurate predictor of future value. It's a thing called the wisdom of crowds. It's a statistical notion. So when we talk about statistics now, right? So this is finance, microeconomics, accounting. Now we'll talk stats, right? So in statistics, the wisdom of crowds, right? This accurate kind of number. Statistics was started by his name's slipped my mind now, but he was a brilliant Victorian scientist through the 1850s and 60s in England. And when he was older, he was like in his 80s, he was still incredibly, I can't think of his name, but he was incredibly interested in stuff, right? So he went to a state fair. And at the state fair, they had a guess the weight of the cow contest, right? And so it was really interesting, you know, and people were guessing all over the place. You know, little kids would guess one weight, you know, 50 pounds, and then somebody else would come and say, you know, 1,270 pounds. And all of those guesses were wrong, and nobody won. But he wrote them all down, and he took the average of them, and it turned out that the average was incredibly close to the right number. It was exactly right on. So there's basically these things called these normal distributions, right? And the average is in the middle. And people make all these guesses, right? And they tend to fall into this normal distribution, this sort of bell curve, where the amount of guesses that are lower and the amount of guesses that are higher kind of equal each other out, and you come up with a number. And this number, in all kinds of instances, is incredibly accurate. It's like magic. No one really knows why. It's called the wisdom of crowds. So that type of effect is what makes the stock market work. These pricing things, because who the heck, you know, you're going to make these kind of guesses about all of the lines of business that Amazon's in, all the possible competitors they could have, all the possible things, a meteorite hitting the earth, you know, nuclear war, every type of contingency. Figure out an interest rate, come back, pull that back to a number, and say it's $2,000. How the heck could you do that? No one, you know, it's like, how could you do that? So the way they do it is with an auction, right? And the auction is supply and demand. It's just a bid every day. Somebody says, I'll sell my shares for $2,005 because I want to get out. And somebody else says, I'll buy shares for $1,995, right? And that's called the bid and ask. And where finally they clear a deal, that's the price. And so every day you look at the stock price, it's going like this, right? Because every transaction's a little bit different. And they show the closing price at the end of the day, but it might have been higher and lower all during the day, and the close might be there, right? That's called the volatility, how much it goes up and down. So every single transaction is going like that, right? And that's happening every day, all day long. A lot of it's done by, most of it is done by computers now. It's not even people. Remember, we still have these pictures of these guys on the floor doing this and stuff. That's baloney. It's all, you know, fast trading with computers.
How many years does it go? I think this is all kind of coming back to, but how many years does that? You're saying the 2000 is all the years added up,
It's essentially what it is.
Backed into the stock price?
That's it. It's the
times how many equity shares are.
They're thinking everybody's basically making a guess on. You don't think about that when you're buying a share. You just think, I think it's going to go up, or I think it's going to go down. If you think it's going to go down, you short it. I think it's going to go up. I like, and the analysts now are saying our target, you know, for Morgan Stanley or whatever, is $24.50 now for Amazon. That's where we think it's going to go. Well, that's just some guy chugging out this kind of stuff, and maybe his bank underwrote the Amazon IPO, so they're telling him, give us a good number because we need to sell more shares. And so those guys are under pressure to lie.
Is it a set number, or is it like literally it could be to the next 5 years or the next 50 or 500 years?
It's to infinity.
Infinite? Okay.
It's to infinity. Basically, right?
The company's going to be around forever, they're saying.
Or whenever they think it's going to terminate, those numbers are pulled back.
That's interesting.
That's really what that's the underlying valuation of a company. A valuation is basically the present value of the future cash flows, and that's basically estimating those future cash flows, applying a discount rate, pulling them all back to present value, adding them up, boom. That's what net present value and those kind of present value formulas are, and we'll get into that in detail in the finance section. But just so you know, that's what it's just everybody's guess, and those guesses are relatively accurate. They started doing this with, I don't know if you heard about this, with political polls are just being really discredited as being wildly inaccurate. Like that one just up in Massachusetts the other night, they had that woman who just won, none of the polls had her even in the lead, and she won last night by 18 points. That's a big mess up. That 528, Nate Silver, which is like, he's the guru of that stuff. He didn't call Trump winning or any of that kind of stuff, so they kind of got discredited. So polls are because people say things and they're maybe not right. So what they've been doing lately is doing things where they want people with skin in the game, and so they have bets on elections. And there's this whole exchange I think it's in Iowa, that does betting on all elections. Those predictions come out to be a lot more accurate than the predictions through the polling things. I forget what it's called, but if you just Google, political prediction betting Iowa or something like that, it'll come up.
So they're having to change it up because people just aren't being truthful on these polls when they're being asked?
They have no skin in the game, so they say, yeah, sure, I don't know, But when they actually have something there, they pay attention a little bit more, and so their results are more accurate.
Very smart.
Pretty neat. And so because we're trying to figure out how can we get, all of this is about how can we see in the future, how can we have predictive kind of power? And we don't have much predictive power. And unfortunately, I can tell you that economics is really bad at predicting the future. Nobody knows what's going on, right? There's always some wacko that predicted doomsday, and then when there's a downturn, he said, I predicted that, and he becomes a guru for like 2 years because he did predict it, but he was totally lucky, So we don't know all that, or predicting technological trends. Nobody, go back and read like Megatrends in the 80s or any of those books that were by the highfalutin, future shock. No one predicted the internet or mobile or any of these kind of, incredible tectonic shifting, innovative things that we've had.
What's amazing is we don't even know what may be coming in 10 years. We may not even have a vague concept of what might happen.
Exactly, and people are more reluctant to predict the future because it's getting harder and harder to predict because it's so rapid. And that's basically, when you look at technology, we're on these exponential curves, right? And so the difference between linear growth and exponential growth, right? Exponential growth starts out kind of slow and then goes wildly, wildly crazy. That's why Mark Andreessen can say software is eating the world. Everything that gets a computer component to it now, from medicine to shopping to anything, suddenly goes crazy. To cars, now we're going to have self-driving cars and all. And people are thinking, well, maybe that's 10 years out. Well, maybe it's going to be next year, And there's all these network effects, and like Facebook, and it's to the square of how many people join is how powerful the network gets. Network effects, and basically the big one of this is Moore's Law. Did you ever hear of that? Moore's Law?
I can't remember that.
Moore's Law there was a guy, Gordon Moore, and he was one of the two co-founders of Intel. And Intel's, up in Rio Rancho, right, big chip making place. And Gordon Moore back in 1965 wrote a article that said, I'm predicting that every 18 months we are doubling the amount of transistors we can put on a piece of silicon, and that for the foreseeable future, that doubling is going to keep happening within 12 to 18 months. Well, they call it Moore's Law now because it's still been happening for the last 50 years, and that type of exponential growth is why this thing has more computing power than all of NASA had in 1968. Really remarkable kind of stuff. Cray supercomputers, right? And now we have that stuff in our pocket. And so we're riding on these incredible exponential curves, and then we have these convergences, right? Where two or three things come together and they make what they call rogue waves, basically, where a wave comes together and makes a big wave, where two or three different technologies converge at the same time and then, have all this power in between them. And so it's really tough to predict now.
You ever seen those quantum computers?
Well, that's the next big thing, and that's
crazy. It's crazy.
It really is. If you're interested in quantum computing, there's a great, if you like podcasts, Tim Ferriss has one with Steve Jurvetson, who is a heavy-duty venture capitalist, brilliant guy. And he talks about quantum computing because he's invested in a couple of companies. But basically what those things do is they don't even go through the number crunching thing. They just burrow to the right answer right off the bat. So they're making leaps and bounds as far as how many of the, I forget what they call them, quills or something, like bits, how many they can have on a quantum computer now. But as they get to a certain threshold, but they're keep increasing. When they get to a certain threshold, it's going to be remarkable devices that are going to take computing to a whole nother level using quantum mechanics, which is very, very strange. It's not like the physics that we know. So that's because that's what they say. Well, we keep running out of, we're using, we're down to the atoms in, distance between the barriers on the transistors on these pieces of silicon and all. There's barriers that we just can't go beyond, and we're going to be coming up against those walls. We keep figuring out ways to get around that, but once we leap to like quantum, then it's going to be a whole nother wave of, giant computational innovation, and who knows where that's going to go, especially with artificial intelligence and things like that. I mean, artificial intelligence is going to outpace human intelligence, and we're going to be.
We'll be in trouble.
We may be in trouble,
Maybe.
or we may be in a great place, where they can, our computational overlords will put us, make us have, everybody will have good governance, everything will be distributed in right ways, we'll have plenty of food, we'll have everything we ever need, medicine will be just unbelievable, we'll live to be 1,000 years old, and
Just gotta make sure we don't turn it off, because then no one will know how to do anything. They'll be like, where's my laptop? Where's my phone?
well, it might be
find my way to,
all that stuff taken care of it for us, and then we can go and do what we actually always wanted to do, whether it's just sit under a tree and read a book, or paint a picture, or listen to music, or watch TV. Do whatever really we're compelled to do, instead of being in this wage slave kind of oppressive environment where I gotta go to work, and geez, I take the money and then I put it to this stuff, and I got to think about all that crap, and suddenly it could free us, and that latent creativity could be really wonderful, or it could be where
Right, no, I'm not doing
it could be bad. We don't know if
Right.
it's going to be. Who's the guy in the wheelchair who just died?
Stephen
Was it
Hawking.
Stephen Hawking? Saying
So
Pandora's box, and
I thought he was full of crap, and then with watching quantum computers and stuff, I'm starting to think that.
Why did you think he was full of crap?
Well, when he said the artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
I was like, nah, that'll never. I'm sorry, I didn't think he was full of crap in that sense.
No, it's okay. No,
The AI, I thought he was full of crap because he was one of the first ones that came out.
the dangers of it. Elon Musk too. There's a
And
bunch.
now Elon
yeah.
Musk,
Yeah.
and now I'm like, now when I see the quantum computer, I'm thinking, yeah, there could be some serious trouble
Yeah.
if they
We
do,
don't know.
if they come alive somehow, which they could. I don't know.
Come alive. But you know
But
what?
the quantum computer's crazy because you're right. We barely harnessed it, but what they say they can do once they get that thing fully.
It can do all kinds of processes that are
At the same time.
extremely fast that
Right.
we can't do now. But yeah, but I think a lot of our concerns may be that we are anthropomorphizing the computers and saying, well, they're going to act like us, and they're going to want to be greedy and power hungry and all that kind of stuff. They may not have those kind of, that may not be the emergent properties that come out of their mindset. But we don't know. We'll find out.
Right.
So anyway, this is all this kind of stuff. What do you think about, let's talk about a branding thing. And anything else, if you have any questions about any of the stuff you've read or anything. But I was thinking of, I don't see anybody with any Nike on, but which is unusual. What do you think about Nike? Colin Kaepernick taking a stand. What's the deal?
Real ballsy decision from them.
Well, it is.
It's probably going to be a smart one. Because they're
Who
saying,
knows?
hey, it's more valuable to be pulling in the younger people who, versus somebody who's old who goes, the American flag, man, Nike, man, I'm going to burn my shoes.
Well, we'll have to see. Yeah, instead of giving them to a homeless shelter, right? Burn them, right? It's pretty interesting that, Michael Jordan said back when he was, he has that whole brand within Nike, the Michael Jordan brand, but he said, Republicans buy sneakers too back in the day so not to take any type of political stands in these ways and stuff. So it is interesting that they went this way, and already it's so prominent, and they've got an unbelievable amount of, press off of it and things, which is really remarkable. And it'll be interesting to see if it dings the brand, or if people, if people buy the, And it's funny, I heard this guy, and he's really irate. He's like, I'm gonna burn my favorite pair of Nikes. Like, still, it's his favorite pair. It's like, not like he doesn't like them. It's just like it's like, oh, my favorite pair of Nikes. Probably in a couple of years, he'll be like, why did I burn those? Now on eBay, I could have gotten $500 for that pair.
Well, they got what they were looking for. Some publicity, good or bad, they got it.
They got it, right. And they're taking a political stand. And the interesting thing is they're a huge contributor to the NFL.
Yeah.
So the NFL isn't coming out and saying, Nike bad, because they
They've got
pay
like
they
10
pay
years
tons
their-
of money.
I think they have 10 years of their jerseys. I think they have a contract with them for about 10 years.
They pay tons of money. Yeah, for
I think
all.
NFL has to uses Nike gear.
Yeah, and Nike is a huge advertiser
Yeah.
during the NFL, so it's a real symbiotic relationship, and so the NFL can't really come out against them. And it's interesting, like Nike stock went down like 5% yesterday or something, so it's probably a good time to buy Nike, maybe. When these kind of dips happen, it's usually
It shot up a little bit this day, but yeah, it was
shot up today probably, yeah, and it'll go back, and it may go higher, like you say, and I don't think Nike's another global brand, and the rest of the world doesn't really care about
Right.
NFL football or anything like that, right? They don't even, so yeah, how much it'll hurt their brand, probably not that much, but it'd be interesting to see. And the NFL was like blaming, they had a ratings decrease last year of like 5% or something like that for the first time. But it may be that the NFL is just saturated. We got Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday. Maybe there's just too much football out there and people aren't just going to watch it all. So sooner or later it's going to go down a little bit. What?
There's never too much.
There can never be too much, right? Well, there is that kind of, demand, and so they're trying to figure out where does the demand go down. But then they're blaming that dip on the disrespect of the flag or whatever. These guys taking a knee, that made the 5% dip and all. But it may not, cause and effect is not necessarily two simultaneous events doesn't mean that one caused the
Maybe
other.
they've gone down 5% because people are so pissed off at the greedy owners, who won't, let their players speak their voices, that it's like,
Yeah.
the heck with them. I'm not going to give them my money anymore. So maybe that's the reason.
We don't, but that's the thing, we don't know. And I heard an argument today that's a false argument because the Nike argument, that they're taking a stand on the other side of this, and it isn't hurting their sales, and so we'll have to see. But interesting that a big company like that, and they're like one of the great marketers of all time, of the second half of the 20th century.
Yeah. You said they got all the sports figures. Most people look up to them.
Well, and that's the thing. There's a number. First, they make really cool stuff too, and it's really usable. And there's that aspirational element that, oh my gosh, the runner, or the tennis star, or the soccer star, or the basketball star, or the football star, the golf. Tigers running around with all the swooshes and all, and so yeah, they bought up all those. But it's interesting to see that too. That now, how do you compete against that? Do you go head to head and you go get the other sports figure like? Body Armor did, right, or Under Armour did with got the
College didn't do college.
the 3-point guy from Golden State.
Oh yeah, Curry.
Seth Curry. So it was Seth Curry against LeBron last year, and Steph Curry had on the Armour sneakers, and LeBron had the Nikes or whatever, and so it's like, who's going to win? But who else took another? So you can compete that way, right, where you can compete head to head. You get a great star, we get a great star, and then we're going to fight in the arena to see who's dominant. And then whoever wins, then I guess if I wear those sneakers, then I am getting some of the basking, some of the glow of that win. I mean, it's kind of kooky, right? How the marketing works, but it's aspirational. But then I was thinking of Adidas, and Adidas took a completely different path, right? And went with like all these street guys and urban guys and rappers and stuff, and made their sneakers have a huge cachet, but it's not with sports figures. It's like with who are some of the big rappers that have sneaker deals with Adidas? I can't think of the guy's name now.
Got me.
But it's huge in those. The one that's married to Kardashian. What's his name?
Oh, that's
Kanye West.
Kanye.
Kanye has sneakers like that. I think P. Diddy has some. They all have these sneaker deals with Adidas, and so all the urban guys are, that has cachet with them too. So they've decided not to compete directly head to head in that arena for sports guys for that aspirational thing. But the rock stars or the pop stars are another aspirational. And when I say aspirational, we aspire to these kind of, to be like those folks. And so we wear the same shoes as them, and then we're kind of like them.
It's
kind of rich.
Converse back in the 80s, they had the weapons, which you either had Celtics, the Larry Bird weapons, or you had the Lakers, weapons, which were kind of different color. But
And that's what they call them, weapons?
they were weapons. Do you remember the weapons?
I don't remember them. No,
They were,
I had Converse.
They were black, kind of high tops for Larry Bird, and then they were kind of purple.
For
and yellow
Magic and stuff.
for
The
Magic, so.
well, I remember Converse. There was the Chuck Taylor and some other kind of. There were two
Oh, yeah.
two different ones, and
When they started,
there's a great book, by the way, if you're into Nike, Shoe Dog. It's all the whole story written by the founder. I read it last year. Really, really good about the whole, how the company evolved and got so huge. I mean, it's really remarkable. So there's a company, laying it on the line, really, in a way. I mean, I'm sure it's calculated.
Right, yeah, their demographics are probably not.
And that kind of stuff is another thing that Facebook and others are really good at, the target marketing. That's what happened in the political campaigns, is you can target a message to the groups you want, and the other people don't even see it.
Right.
So you could be saying, oil bad, coal bad, da-da-da-da-da, in Wyoming, and just to the people that, you've targeted that are, whatever, drive a Subaru and are, into that kind of thing, and not to the cowboys and stuff at all, and they wouldn't even know to take their money out of there or something. So that type of that's another danger of it, in a way, is this type of micro-targeting, especially in political campaigns, where you could say something really bad about your opponent, and the opponent doesn't even know, and you're preaching right to the people that are going to have the confirmation bias. I always knew that person was a pedophile, or whatever,
Banks are coming, it's completely different. Millennials don't even walk in.
Well, this kind of thing here, too. If you can reduce this number, right?
Exactly.
This number grows.
That's
There's
exactly
two ways to grow this number: reduce this or increase this.
Yeah.
So reducing that. And banks is another thing. I mean, when you talk about automation and robotics and machines and all this kind of stuff taking over, it's like, oh my gosh, well, they're going to be robots. But think about ATMs. Banking was one of the first things to really use a lot of automated kind of services. And nowadays, I do my banking. If I even get a check, I'll just take a picture of it, and then it uploads it, and then everything else is just transferring between accounts. And
So we've also done studies where, although millennials don't want to walk into a branch, and they really don't, there's another study that says, though, that you have to have a brick and mortar presence, because people are more apt to, if they know that Bank of America or your Compass is near their house, they feel more comfortable.
It's like an
going.
advertising, a
So
monument
you
to
can't just shut it down.
a monument to branding or
So
something.
there's a monument. So just knowing that there's a brick and mortar, and even though the money's not even going to be in that vault. It's that psyche of just knowing that, hey, that branch is there. I'm going to go on compass.com and sign up. So there's still, we're in this weird situation in banking.
Well, it's a transitional kind of thing. I mean, think back. I bet we all remember with our smartphones, right? When you first got a mobile phone, how long did it take you to get rid of that landline? For a while, didn't we have both? Like, well, I can't really get rid of the landline. And after a while, I was like, I never use that thing. All I get is calls to switch to MCI on it. It's always annoying.
Yeah, that's good.
And so that
Maybe
we're in that
we'll
kind of
see
transition.
That'll go away.
You never know, or it may not. Well, and like we said with Amazon, right? Amazon is completely digital first all the way. What did they start doing? They bought Whole Foods. They're opening bookstores in the major cities now and stuff. And they also have their Amazon Go, which are the stores where you can go in and grab the stuff and just go, and it's paid, on your smartphone and stuff.
There's a mattress company doing that too. It's all online.
Casper, or these other ones, yeah.
That's it. And now they're going to do 200 brick and mortar stores. That's interesting. It's almost like backwards.
Right, exactly. It is kind of back, but it makes sense. And they realize that, hey, if we have these footprints, it does help us, or that's what their thinking is. They may do that for a couple of years and say,
There's a good mix maybe.
Right. And things like, but it's amazing. Mattresses and selling mattresses. Who would have thought? Because that's what mattress stores are, right? You go and you lay on the mattress, and you lay on this one, and then you lay on that one, and then you go buy it.
Big profit margins, because that's all I see
Huge.
in town.
Yeah.
A mattress store here, and they have the prime real estate.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
But I think that's what these guys do, is go and undercut those big, margins that those guys are getting, and wow, you can get the mattress for half price or something. They ship it to you, and you have 100 days, and you can give it back to them or something crazy. And
But the thing is, how you're going to get it back into that box, I have no clue.
Right.
That's true.
The thing
If
expands.
you can get it in there, that's what you can say.
And when the poor FedEx guy comes, like.
Yeah, it's got here, dude. Here's my king mattress.
But there's lots of stuff like, there's Harry's shaving stuff now, and there's somebody Wahlberg glasses, right, where you can get your glasses online, and all kinds, and you buy your clothes online. I buy all my clothes online all the time now. It's like, my wife buys them for me, but never thought you could do that. I have to try them on, right? But if you can ship them back right away, so there's all kinds of things like that. One of the things that seems to be hurting is these companies that came out that were going to do pre-made meals, and then it was all the stuff chopped up, and you can come home and have a delightful meal with your family and have and you know, all the ingredients and the recipe, and it's in a box, and you just do it and all. But now Amazon is competing with that through Whole Foods, and like, those companies are toast. You know, they're just going away. Blue Plate or some other ones, you know, they're not going to last too long, I don't think, because.
There's a new thing I just saw that there's going to be some kind of car. It's not even rental. You just are part of a car club, and you get a new car every month. So you can sign up for an SUV in the wintertime and then a sports car in the summer.
Well, we're moving away from, you know, we've gone, and I think I talked
You had
a little
mentioned
bit,
that.
access and ownership kind of models.
Where a car could pick you up. So I thought of you when I saw it. There's actually some club is.
Well, they're doing it, you know, when we think of, you know, our movies and our music and things like that, now we get access. We don't care about owning those things. Same thing is probably going to happen with our cars, because they're such an inefficient giant asset. And think about this. This is a big thing to think about. Once we go to like Uber and those kind of services, but with autonomous vehicles, and they just come pick us up, we, you know, put in a time and they can come. They have these models where it's not going to, you don't have to wait 20 minutes. They will be there in 1 minute from when you call, because there'll be so many of them going around. Then suddenly we don't have to warehouse all these cars, so parking lots will go away, because you'll just drive up to the front of Walmart and then they'll come back and get you in a half hour. Or here, we would just get picked up. We wouldn't need that big parking lot. We have in the United States about 200 million cars, more or less. And we have about 5 times that many parking spaces. So we have about 1 billion parking spaces. That's as much paved land as the state of Connecticut, the size of Connecticut. That land is going to now become usable land. We won't need these giant parking lots. Look at the outside especially like Albuquerque, in these Western car culture towns, you know, the amount of parking lots are just unbelievable. All that stuff will go away, you know.
What is the oil and auto industry? I mean, that's going to be a huge pushback, but how do they?
Well, you'll still have to, the motive power of the cars will still have to happen.
Less so. It'll be like Uber, which is more efficient than taxis. You'll have.
Yeah.
You won't have as many vehicles on the road.
Absolutely. We won't have as many vehicles on the road, and they'll be super efficient, right? Because once it drops you off, over the next 2 hours while you're doing your thing, it's going and dropping off other people, so that vehicle is servicing 20 people or whatever
They're
it
going to
is.
get the best gas mileage, because that company's going to make the best dollar, so it'll be like some kind of Prius.
Well, and you guys are still saying gas mileage. I mean, I think that petrochemical products are going to go away. In you know, oil. I mean, first of all, when you think about it, it's a depletable resource, and at some point it's going to go away. So your bank is doing a good bet in that thing. I wanted to get back to that because Al Gore, right, the great guy, he made a book called The Future, and it's really fantastic. It's 6 drivers of the future, what it's going to be. So he's actually predicting, and it's really a lot of right-on stuff. And he went with a guy, his name is Donald Blood, I think, and he was a Goldman Sachs or some big investment banker, and the two of them made an investment fund. And they did all those kind of investments based on what resources are going to look like into the future is one of the things. And realizing that on the balance sheets of Exxon and all these big, you know, they have all of these reserves, and their argument is those are reserves, but they're not going to be able to extract all those reserves because we're going to go away from that kind of model, and they're going to, you know, and so their balance sheets are overstating the value of their reserves, so we're underselling them and all. It turns out that last year and this year, their money management firm and portfolio has been the highest performing. So by doing these kind of things, everybody thinks, oh, green and all, and say maybe it's, you know, it has an ideology and you think you're doing good, but it actually makes uber financial sense too. So really remarkable. So in a way, your bank, by taking that position, you may get some blowback now, but in another year or two, you know, you might come out as being, wow, you know, the one that was on.
We're just trying to keep,
and especially,
like you said, the initial reaction.
Sure.
And the dust is going to settle.
And that's understandable.
We just gotta figure out. It's like the Nike thing, you know, they lost their market share.
And we're all emotional. The way when our ways of life change, we panic, and that's what we're really in the middle of. You know, I think there's ever hear of Luddites and the Luddites, people that don't embrace technology. Sometimes go, oh, you're a Luddite, you know. I mean, if you still had a, you know, like my mom, a rotary phone, you know, oh, just a Luddite, you know. And there was a guy named Robert Ludd, and he was a rabble-rouser back in the day, and got, when all of the looms, the weaving looms came in England in the 1760s or whatever it was, and they mechanized weaving, all the people that were in the weaving business panicked because their way of life was going away, and these robots are taking it away, these looms. And so they went in and they destroyed all the looms that were, put into these factories and stuff like that. Which is really crazy because they were working 16 hours a day. There was no such thing as a weekend. You'd start when you were 5 years old as child labor and work in these places, but at the same time, they didn't want the robots taking their work. And I think of that with coal miners. My granddaddy was a coal miner, my daddy was a coal miner, and dagnabbit, I'm going to be a coal miner. Well, what's so great about being underground all the time, and at the end of the day, 40 years, you got black lung, and thanks very much. Or if you're lucky, right? Or you die in some kind of a cave-in or something, and it's dangerous, it's dirty, it's hard work. So to have that kind of work go away, even though those people think that I need that because I need that to support my family, if there was another alternative to that, it's really for the best for them, in a way. It's best because you could leave a more happy and healthy life above ground. I've heard stories of guys that, did that for 30 years and they had to sleep under the kitchen table because they just were uncomfortable being out in the world or in the daylight and stuff like that. It's really heartbreaking, and so I understand in West Virginia and these places, it's really tough to see those places close and have no alternative. That's not the way. We got to have the alternatives in place. I think companies like Uber and stuff too, if you're going to disrupt like that, have a big fund of money so that instead of letting the taxi driver who, came and saved his money and bought a medallion, and he's driving in New York and suddenly his medallion is cut in half in price and he can't feed his family, commits suicide, pay those people to say, here, we're going to give you some transition money because we know we're disrupting the heck out of this market. Instead of like being smug Silicon Valley, we're so smart, we're disrupting everything. Don't let innocent people take it in the shorts. No, it's a brutal world, but I think that has to, it's for their own benefit, for our own benefit. If there's going to be these disruptions that are going to come, and man, I think they're really coming. With there's not going to be as many jobs as there once was because the robots are going to do it.
Well, they said technology is going to screw up business for like 40 years, and I think it's true. Like we're going to try and find ourselves what's going on. I mean, like you said, these things are taking control of our lives, and we're ordering stuff. I mean, we're in a flight. My wife ordered $300 worth of shopping on an airplane. She got a signal, and I was like, "Did you just?" I got an email. We're talking. Did you just order a lot of stuff? What the hell?
Did you already spend my bonus?
2-hour flight. $300 just came through. So yeah.
Well, and that's amazing. I mean, airplanes are just hurtling information factories now, with Wi-Fi on.
Well, and that's an interesting idea too, because right now they make you pay for internet access on airplanes, but who knows if they could work out a proper marketing deal and just offer free airtime to everybody so that they could buy. It's like what's
Right. If that was somehow
a technological problem with offering free airtime to everybody.
More revenue for them, and maybe Google or Amazon or something would say, hey, Delta, we will pay you X amount per airline, for air flight for the internet, and then we get all of the information. You log on to, and we're gonna own that thing, and we'll pay you, a premium of 50% on what you're getting for your revenues from the internet sales now. Something like that could, and do the same thing in hotels.
That's a good idea.
They could do the same thing in hotels and other places. Yeah, might happen.
And then Amazon's got this, this Alexa, these Echo things.
I hate those.
They're
I'm not doing that.
Well, when you think of Siri and what is it?
The phones may be doing the
Google,
same thing.
Google Go or something, and what's the Microsoft has one too, and
I got
Alexa.
When they first came out, the kids were asking, they would see a Barbie commercial and then they would say,
Alexa, buy that for me.
Will you buy that Barbie?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah. It happened quite a bit actually, so they had to change for the parental settings and things, they had to figure that out.
But you think they turn those things off when we don't command? I mean, they're listening to everything. But I mean, there's microphones in each one of our phones, and there's microphones up in all these things here.